The sanctum of Kefmorin had stood silent for 3,000 years, its crystalline walls humming with energies that predated most civilizations in the galaxy. Captain Marcus Chun stood at the entrance, his environmental suit's readings going haywire as waves of ancient power washed over the sensors. "The readings are impossible," whispered Dr. Zara Veltar, her 4 arms adjusting multiple scanning devices simultaneously. The Kethani archaeologist's usually steady voice carried an edge of reverence and fear. "The energy signatures suggest this weapon was forged during the First War, when the architects still walked among us." Commander Thickrose, the expedition's military leader, kept his massive reptilian frame positioned between the humans and the inner chamber. His species, the Draconian hegemony, had been the galaxy's dominant military force for millennia. No species should possess such power. The architects sealed it here for good reason. Marcus ignored the protests echoing through his comm system from the mixed alien crew aboard their research vessel. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, still considered newcomers by species that measured history in geological epochs. They'd been invited on this expedition as observers, nothing more. The sword hung suspended in a column of pure energy at the chamber's center, its blade seeming to absorb light itself. Ancient architect script spiraled around. The containment field, warnings in a language that predated most current civilizations. Every species in the galaxy knew the legends. Weapons of the architects chose their wielders, and no living being had been deemed worthy since the architect's mysterious disappearance. "The containment field is failing," Dr. Veltar announced, her voice tight with panic. "The resonance frequency is destabilizing. If it collapses completely, the energy release could destroy half this star system." Thecro stepped forward, his hand moving toward the ceremonial blade at his side. "My people have guarded ancient weapons for 10,000 years. If anyone is to attempt this, no." The voice came from an unexpected source. The sword itself pulsed with light, and somehow they all understood the meaning behind the energy pattern. "Not you." The Draconian commander's eyes widened in shock. His species had been the architect's chosen warriors, their bloodlines supposedly carrying traces of the ancient race's genetic markers. For the weapon to reject him was incomprehensible. Dr. Veltar approached next, her scholarly mind reasoning that her deep understanding of architect technology might qualify her. Again, the sword pulsed. "Not you?" One by one, the expedition members tried to approach. The ethereal navigator, whose species existed partially in subspace. The cybernetic nexus collective representative, whose network intelligence spanned millions of minds. The crystalline shard bearer, whose people were living mineral matrices. Each was rejected with the same definitive pulse of energy. The containment field flickered dangerously, cracks appearing in the energy matrix. 30 minutes until complete failure, Dr. Veltar reported, her voice barely controlled. "The cascade will be unstoppable after that." Marcus stepped forward, drawing stares from every member of the expedition. "What about the human?" Theckrose let out a sound that might have been laughter if it weren't so bitter. "Your species is barely out of its star system. You've never even seen a proper war, let alone the cosmic conflicts that forged these weapons." "Maybe that's exactly why," Marcus replied quietly, removing his helmet despite the protests from his suit's safety systems. The ancient air of the sanctum filled his lungs, tasting of ozone impossibilities. The sword's energy pattern shifted as he approached, but there was no rejection pulse. Instead, the weapon seemed to study him with an intelligence that transcended mere programming. Marcus could feel something vast and ancient touching the edges of his mind. Sifting through his memories and experiences, it saw his species' history, a violent, chaotic tapestry of wars and conflicts, but also remarkable recoveries and growth. It witnessed humanity's capacity to adapt, to find hope in darkness, to unite former enemies against greater threats. It observed how humans, despite their brief existence on the galactic stage, had already begun forming alliances and friendships across species barriers that had stood for millennia. the sword saw something else. Something that made the other species excellent in their specialized roles but potentially limiting when facing the unknown. They were all products of ancient civilizations with established hierarchies and traditional thinking. Humanity was still writing its story. Marcus reached out, his bare hand passing through the failing containment field without resistance. The moment his fingers closed around the weapon's hilt, the sanctum erupted in light. Power flooded through him, not the overwhelming force that would have incinerated most beings, but a careful, measured flow that his human adaptability somehow managed to process. The sword's consciousness merged partially with his own, sharing fragments of its purpose and history. He saw flashes of the architect's final days. Their realization that rigid perfection was not enough to face the chaos growing at the galaxy's edge. They had created weapons not for their own people, but for those who would come after, weapons that required not just strength or intelligence, but the flexibility to grow and change when faced with the impossible. The containment field stabilized, then dissolved entirely as the sword accepted its new wielder. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, the weapon humming with contentment in his grip. Impossible, Thekros breathed. Your species is too young, too inexperienced. Maybe, Marcus interrupted, feeling the sword's approval of his response. That's exactly what it was looking for. Dr. Veltar's instruments registered the weapon's energy signature changing, adapting to its human wielder while retaining its fundamental power. The reading suggests it's not just accepting you, she said with wonder. It's evolving with you. As they prepared to leave the sanctum, Marcus understood why the sword had chosen him. The galaxy was changing, new threats emerging that would require fresh perspectives and the willingness to break old patterns. The ancient weapons of the architects hadn't been created for the species that already existed, but for the ones that would grow to meet tomorrow's challenges. Humanity might be young by galactic standards, but sometimes the universe needed exactly that: the audacity of youth and the courage to touch what others deemed untouchable. The sword pulsed once more against his palm, a warm acknowledgement between old wisdom and new possibility. Together, they would write the next chapter of galactic history.